everyone, I'm Literary Freak 11, and today I'm going to do my April TBR, which will be for the O.W.L Read-a-Thon. For those of you who don't know, this is a Harry Potter themed readathon, so I will be taking my O.W.Ls, and each subject corresponds to a different prompt, and then you pick books for each prompt, and the person who created this book roast, Hannah, has done so much work, and she's made a careers booklet. So my career that I'm going to try and get will be Magizoologist, and you see there's like a description and some pictures, and my printer cut off because I didn't do fit to page. Career bulletins over here as well. So like, you know, really, really detailed stuff. And so over here are the O.W.Ls and NEWTs, ordinary wizarding levels, and then the newts will be in August. And so depending on what you do for the owls will be, you know, also depending on what you do for the NEWTs. I don't know how the grading is going to work yet, so I'm kind of curious to see how all that's going to fit in. So I'm going to do these 4 subjects. This is not like a challenging subject. Some of these careers require 12 books, some of them require or 8 or 3 or something like that. So I'm going to try to do as many subjects as I can because I think that I'm guessing it will pay off for the NEWTs, and so that's kind of my plan, except for I think I'm not going to take Ancient Runes because the prompt is a retelling, and I'm just not a fan of retellings. I don't think that I own any retellings. Oh, I actually do own that Alice in Wonderland retelling. It's not a priority for me. It's, you know, I think that will be like the very last thing. So that's that book up here. You see how little I care about this because I'm not even going to bring it down. What's it called? Alice in Zombieland, which is obviously an Alice in Wonderland retelling. So last thing that I'll do is probably going to be that one. Go down the list. They're alphabetical. So arithmancy. The prompt is a book by more than one author. And for this, I've selected Merchants of Doubt by Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway. And so 2 authors is a really trying to dispel myths that, you know, are like the scientific community. There are scientists that really, you know, try to do fake studies and things like that. And so I think this is going to be about that. The next book I have is Star Climber, and this is about a guy who's trying to go to space and on a mission, and so he has to survive rigorous training, and there are terrorists involved, and it just seems like a kind of interesting book. And that's obviously on my audiobook list. Oh yeah, and I forgot. So that's for astronomy, and the prompt is a book with the word star in the title. The next subject is Care of Magical Creatures, and the prompt is a land animal, and so I'm gonna go with A Natural History of Dragons because firstly, I love that like science fantasy element, and like obviously this was a big part of the earlier part of this channel, and so I'm really excited. Actually, I saw it was like, oh, are dragons a land animal? Like, see, I feel like it's land versus aquatic. Like, just because they can fly, their resting state is not in the air, you know? Like, I would still consider them to be terrestrial. Like, they make nests on the ground for the most part, and I think it also depends on the species, because I think some are more flight-prone than others. It's about this girl trying to be a dragon naturalist, and she encounters problems along the way, and she learns more about dragons, and so I'm really interested in this. I have been for a long time. It's been on my shelf way too long. For charms, you have to pick an adult book, and so for that, I'm gonna go for When Will Jesus Bring the Pork Chops? This is a George Carlin book, and he is a comedian, for those of you who don't know, and some of his comedy is very adult, trust me, and I read a book of his before, and they're just really fun, and he wrote he did his comedy, 20, 30 years ago, and it just still speaks so true to society today. And you're like, he'll just comment on how dumb people are, and you're like, yeah, that's true. And so this is going to be my selection for charms, and the charm is age line, and that's why it's an adult book. So you're creating an age line because it's adult. I get it. The next prompt is Defense Against the Dark Arts. So perform a reductor curse, a book that starts with the letter R. So I have picked Rook, and basically this is a French Revolution type book, except there's like a fantasy element. Basically, people are disappearing from their jail cells because, it's the French Revolution. Everyone's being put in jail for being, a heretic and whatever. And so people are disappearing from their cells, and just a red feather is left. And so it's about this whole mystery of how they're disappearing, what's happening. The next is Divination, and so for that is a book set in the future. And for that, I picked The Thousandth Floor. And so this is a book that takes place in the future in a society where everyone lives in this one building, and the higher floor you are, the richer you are. And so basically it's about this society and how things function. And so that's all I know. I assume there are characters in conflict. I haven't read about that. I just want to go into this knowing as little as possible because I really enjoy the premise. Next is Herbology, and that is a book that has a plant on the cover. And so I'm going with To Kill a Mockingbird. See, there's a tree over there, so leaves, branch. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. I have actually never read this book, and so I'm really interested to read it, especially after reading Hidden Figures, which is not about racism necessarily, but definitely deals with it. And so, going back to an even further time in the history of racism, so I'm really interested in reading that. I know it's a classic. The prompt for the next one, which is a history of magic, so that's read a book that is at least 10 years old. So for that, I'm going to pick, I don't know why I'm trying to do this way, Tithe. And this book was published in 2002, so clearly it is old enough to qualify for this. It's basically a fairy story. It's one of Holly Black's early books, and I'm not too big into fairies, but I've heard a lot of good things about this book, and I've heard it's a classic. So this will be, if I do not choose to read To Kill a Mockingbird as the Herbology one, if I, read all the books that I have and still have extra. I didn't show this, but this is like this really nicely laid out list of all of the prompts and what they are. So Muggle Studies is to read a contemporary, and for that I'm going to read And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, and this is also an adult book. It is basically recommended to me by Murphy Napier, and she is an indie author and a booktuber, and she did a Valentine's Day video about books that have no romance, and this is one of them, and it is basically a family story between a father, grandfather, and son, and that's really all I know about it. And it is coming from my library, and my library can be very unreliable. I have a book that's been on hold for a month and a half, so hopefully I will actually get it in the month of August. Next prompt is potions. Next ingredient, read a sequel. And so I will be picking up the Subtle Knife. This is the sequel to The Golden Compass. And The only other sequel I have on this list is A Gathering of Shadows, and I looked at the size of this, and I looked at the size of that, and I went, if I'm going to try for 12 books this month, it's clearly going to be this one. Actually, as you see, I started a little bit. I liked it. I think I put it aside. Book that I was highly anticipating more, but I really did like the start. The main character has now ended up in this town where there's no people, and she meets a boy, and that's as far as I got so far. And the final prompt is Transfiguration, and that is a book with sprayed edges. And I only have one book with sprayed edges. It says or a red cover, but I do have a book with sprayed edges. So I'm going to go for that. I don't have it with me, but it is a beautiful Barnes & Noble edition of Neil Gaiman's American Gods and Anansi Boys. And my boyfriend is currently borrowing it, so I'll have to get it back from him so that I can complete it for this read-a-thon. I think I'm only going to read one book and then set the other one aside. So now I'm going to go back to the magical career that I have chosen. And so basically these are the requirements. So those are the books that I want to prioritize because I think what you read ends up affecting your NEWTs, as I mentioned. So first we have Care of Magical Creatures, and that's this book. A Natural History of Dragons. So I'm gonna set that there. Then we have Charms, and for that I picked When Will Jesus Bring the Pork Chop? And I'm sure I'll be charmed by this book. I'm so sorry. And then for Herbology, I have To Kill a Mockingbird. That is an audiobook. That's the only audiobook, so I really gotta get reading. And then finally, we have Potions, so we will be reading The Subtle Knife, and those are going to be the books that I prioritize. Obviously, I can't start any of these until, until April starts. There is one more that doesn't fit into any of these categories, I don't think, but still, I have already borrowed it from the Hoopla borrows and you can't renew a book, so I'm gonna really try and get to it, and that is 1,000 Pieces of You, and basically this is a sci-fi story that takes place across the multiverse. There is this girl whose dad is murdered, and he's a scientist, and they think the lab assistant did it, so she pursues him across the multiverse to try and basically, take him down. As she goes through all these multiverses, she meets different versions of him, and she kind of starts to question his guilt. So I think that's going to be really interesting. So that's it for now. It's a really long TBR, ambitious. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. All my social media will be in the description below. I'm also on BitChute now, so if you're looking for all media, I'm there. I'm on Minds, and I'm also on Goodreads. So you're welcome to follow me on any of those. Thank you so much for watching. Have a